Hello, everyone. See, I need to pull this up on my phone in case anyone has comments, then I can see. Oh, let's see here. Okay. How's everyone doing? So, as you know, I am doing lives every Tuesday at 1 p.m. And we are currently on the topic of the 5 elements of healthy sleep habits. So last week we talked about sleep duration, and today we are going to be talking about sleep regularity. So we're really going to be mostly focusing on bedtime. Hi, Hope. Hi. For anyone who doesn't know who I am, my name is Megan Robert. I am owner of After the Stork. I'm a child sleep coach, a postpartum doula, and a former nanny. So I've been working with kids for a long time, but my main focus is to help you as a parent get the sleep that you need and to help your child get the sleep that they need in order to grow and develop. So if you are interested in what it is exactly that I do when we work together, I've got a lovely document that you can download, and I'll give you the link in the notes below in order to get that document. So a quick disclaimer, just to make sure we're all on the same page. For medical issues or concerns, please consult your pediatrician or other healthcare provider. If your child snores or mouth breathes, please reach out to your pediatrician, an ENT, or a sleep specialist to check for any underlying medical issues that are hindering your child's sleep. So basically, if your child snores or mouth breathes, it might not be a big deal. It might not be an issue. I'm not one to diagnose this, but it can be a sign that your child has large adenoids, large tonsils, has sleep apnea, things that would hinder your child from getting the deep sleep that they need in order to feel very rested. So even if you have a child that doesn't wake up frequently at night or lets you know that, they still might have issues sleeping really well, getting that good quality sleep. So if this is your child, I suggest talking to a professional about that. Also, I am not a medical professional. I help families from a behavioral perspective. So these videos that I'm going to be providing you throughout the weeks, they are strictly educational and informational. They are not meant to promote the general understanding of, or they are meant to promote, the general understanding of child sleep for parents and anyone who works with younger children. The information contained within this video and the resources available for download are not intended as and shall not be understood or construed as medical advice or substitute of medical advice. All right, so now that that's out of the way, how was everyone's President's Day weekend? I'm assuming some of you, your kids were home from school, so you had a longer weekend than normal. The stay-at-home moms, real MVPs with your children 7 days a week. I do not have children of my own, but as running a business and being a volleyball coach, 3-day weekends throw me off a little bit as well. So this past weekend, I was in DC with my volleyball team. I have 12 and under, so I've got children that range from 9 to 12 years of age. And let me tell you, the schedule we had this weekend is a perfect segue into our topic today. My kids had games on Saturday in the PM wave, meaning that our last game was at 8:30 and we weren't out of the venue until about 10 p.m. And then, because of how we came out on our pool, we were in the AM wave on Sunday. So most of the kids got to bed around 11 p.m. and then were expected to be at the venue at 8 a.m. the next morning. So just imagine me being a sleep coach, how I responded to the survey that they provided. It was a great tournament, but children that age need bedtime so much earlier. So great segue into the topic for today, because we are going to be talking about sleep regularity and specifically talking about irregular bedtime. Before we hop into it though, let's just go over a quick review of the past couple weeks. First of all, we talked about the 5 elements of healthy sleep habits. So I am getting all of this information from this book, Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child by Dr. Mark Weisbluth. So this is a good book to have. However, you can see it is a very thick book. And as a tired parent or just being a parent, reading this sometimes isn't the best route for you. So what I'm trying to do is dive into each element and then we'll talk about sleep science in the future to help you understand what your child needs in order to get good, healthy sleep habits and how sleep works so that you understand why it's important without you having to read this book. So the 5 elements are sleep duration, sleep regularity, sleep consolidation, sleep schedule, and naps. Now, naps somewhat fall under sleep regularity, but I'm not going to dive into that today since naps is a completely other topic that we're going to talk about. And also we will talk about the biology behind sleep regularity in the future when we get more into sleep science. So if you would like a quick resource that has these 5 elements listed and a quick summary of what they mean so that you can check and see if your child has all of these elements, you can go to www.afterthestorksleep.com/elements of healthy sleep. I will also have that in the show notes or the comments below. So last week, we talked specifically about sleep duration. I touched on the range of sleep needs for your child based on age, and I touched on red flags to look for to know whether or not your child needs more sleep. If you are wanting to get resources like this, a list full of, for example, the red flags that your child might not be getting enough sleep, join my email list. I sent out a link with my last email on Sunday that provides all of these red flags to look for so that you have an idea if your child does in fact need more sleep. But in order to get it, you've got to be part of the email list. You can become part of the email list using the link I mentioned above in order to get the elements of healthy sleep habits. Now, today, ready to jump into it, we are going to talk about sleep regularity. And like I mentioned earlier, specifically bedtime. So generally, bedtime should be happening around the time that your child is in a drowsy state so that they have an easier time falling asleep. We are trying to catch that window when they're drowsy, which is right before they get too tired. If we wait too long and they reach an overtired state, it can be difficult for them to fall asleep. However, a regular bedtime can play a big role in how well your child is sleeping and also in your child's daytime behavior. So for younger children who are still napping, the timing of bedtime should start around the same time every night. However, it might need to fluctuate 30 to 60 minutes based on your child. There are certain things to look for. We want to pay attention to how long was your child's nap or naps during the day? What was the level of activity during the day? And most importantly, what is your child's behavior or temperament in the late afternoon? I talked about, I think it was last week or the week before, I talked about looking at children who nap, looking at that window between 4 and 5 p.m. If your child is fussy, falling over, throwing a temper tantrum, just not in a happy mood and not in his normal state, you want to consider an earlier bedtime. However, for older children, we usually want to keep the bedtime still at the same time. For older children, though, to make sure they're getting enough sleep in a 24-hour period, again, we want to look at their temperament between the hours of 5 and 7. So children napping 4 to 5, red flag if they possibly need an earlier bedtime. Older children 5 to 7 p.m., we want to see if maybe we need to provide a longer sleep duration in general for them. Now, I understand, and you should too, that this is a balancing act. It's not going to be perfect. You guys, this is life. Just because I'm a sleep coach, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to help you get your child sleeping 100% all the time, because your child is human, just like you are, right? We have off nights. We have off days. We have to be understanding of that. But this is a balancing act. So here's a great example. Currently, I am working with a family that I've worked with in the past. I helped them get their child into a good sleep schedule, sleeping through the night, right around 4 to 5 months of age. And their child is now 15 months old. So they are going through that 2 to 1 nap transition. So this is a balancing act. We've been figuring out, okay, what time do we need his nap to be? How can we help him make this adjustment? We want to avoid the overtired state, but we also have to help him get to the appropriate schedule. Well, what we've been finding out for him specifically is that 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. is a great window for bedtime. And if he goes to bed any earlier than that, regardless of his state prior to that time, he's going to wake up early. So we are paying attention to what patterns are we seeing, and how can we adjust. And generally, an earlier bedtime is something that I would suggest. However, this family reached out to me before their child was super tired, and so their child has been in a good rhythm. They've just been having trouble getting him from that 2 to 1 nap transition. So having that bedtime at a regular time has been helpful for him to sleep in to at least 6 a.m. Last night, for example, he went down 10 minutes before 7. He had a great nap. He was in a great mood, but he was a little bit silly prior to bedtime, so they put him down a little bit earlier. He woke up earlier today. So we're going to continue to see how that bedtime around 7 p.m. works. But also keep in mind, like I mentioned, sometimes we do need an earlier bedtime, even though we're aiming for a regular time. So it's going to depend on your child's age. Generally, children 12 months and under, we might need to move bedtime up based on their day, like I mentioned earlier. But sometimes those older children have a hard time with fluctuating bedtimes. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out what time is best for your child and what works. I highly, highly suggest log your information. Log the time that your child sleeps. This will help you figure out what's working and what's not without feeling like you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. You don't want to just go off of emotion. Oftentimes we can assume that something is going on with sleep because of something that we are assuming when we're not really taking a step back and looking at what's going on. So regular bedtime, but if you need to, we might need to bring that bedtime up occasionally based on your situation. Another time that we sometimes need an extremely early bedtime, and it's not going to be regular, is when I'm working with parents, or if you're working with your child who has been in an overtired state for an extremely long time. So a child that's never really been on a schedule, that's never been able to fall asleep on their own, that has difficulties making it through the night, other than a feeding that's needed, but waking up and needing assistance. These children are usually overtired, and we don't yet know what their regular bedtime is because their schedule's already all over the place. So that's another time that we might not be using a regular bedtime, when we're going through sleep training and we're dealing with a child that is extremely, extremely tired. Okay, so the main takeaway right now is regular bedtime. If you've got a little bit of an older child, if you've got a child that's about 12 months and under, you might have to fluctuate 30 to 60 minutes. And if you're sleep training with an extremely overtired child, then maybe an earlier bedtime will be needed. Now, I know some of you are parents who work. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with a child that needs a regular bedtime at, let's say, 6 p.m.? It, again, depends on your child's age. But it has been shown that if you are not able to have a regular bedtime and you're fluctuating with an early bedtime and a late bedtime, and the earlier bedtime is generally what your child needs, but you can't consistently provide that, you're going to want to try to provide your child with more of a regular bedtime at the right hour instead of fluctuating every night. So I know that there are working parents out there with children in daycare, and sometimes your commute home is super long. So let's say your child's needing to be in bed by 6, but you're rushing in the door at 6:30. You're having to cook dinner, to bathe your child, put them to bed, and it's just not consistently working. If this is your life and you're not able to make an adjustment for an earlier bedtime, now first let me say, trying to make an adjustment would be the first step. So, do you need to bathe your child before bedtime? Can you move that to a different time? Is there a way to have dinner ready so that you're not running home and having to cook dinner? Can the babysitter, feed your child dinner so that when you get home, you can do bedtime earlier? But it is more important that the bedtime is at a regular time. So it is better to have a little bit of a later bedtime, that consistently happens at that time than an early bedtime one night and then a late bedtime and then an early and then a late. So keep that in mind. If this is your lifestyle, you do not have to always rush. You can figure out what works for you all as a family and help your child by just having a regular bedtime. Now, something to keep in mind, a couple studies were mentioned in the book by Dr. Mark Weisbluth, this one again, and I found them interesting. So the effect of an irregular bedtime over early childhood, so irregular, meaning the fluctuating bedtime, has shown to cause behavioral difficulties later on down the road. It can affect your child's development over time. So a group of children were examined at ages 3, 5, and 7. Those who had an irregular bedtime and who had an irregular bedtime over time had behavioral difficulties at age 7. So because it accumulated over time, they had those behavioral difficulties at an older age. Now, some good news, this can be reversed. If you have a child who is having this struggle, try providing them with a regular bedtime so that they can then get back into a routine and over a 24-hour schedule, and see if that helps with any behavioral difficulties that they might be having. Another study that was mentioned compared preschool to home. So this one was one of my favorite studies that I was reading over. They looked at children between ages 4 and 5. They examined them in their home environment, they examined their behavior at school, and then they looked at their sleep patterns. So interesting thing that they noticed was children who had irregular bedtimes did not comply with their teachers urging them to join activity. So they, if the teachers were trying to get them to be more involved, the kids did not want to or weren't as willing to listen. They were not excited about learning new things. They argued more, they fought more. There just was more trouble for them in school behaviorally. And then when they looked at the home environment, it did not matter what was going on at home. It did not matter if there was stress at home with the family or if it was just a calm household. There was no correlation between their behavior at school and what was going on at home. However, there was a correlation between their behavior at school and a regular bedtime. So, takeaway, a regular bedtime can truly help your child throughout the day. It can help with their behavior, it can help with their attention span, it can help with their willingness and enthusiasm to be part of activities and to learn. And this goes up to older children. If you've got teenagers, having a regular bedtime is also important for them. So for the age group that I was just talking about, the 4 to 5, the preschool age, keep in mind though that there can be too late of a bedtime. What they found was that a regular bedtime was necessary in order to see those positive behavioral changes. However, if the bedtime was regular and it was past 9 p.m., regardless if it was regular, they still had behavioral issues. So for those that are struggling to get home and get your child in bed, try to aim for somewhere between 7 and 8 if you can. And this again will depend on your child's age, what time they really need to be going to bed. It can't, some children do go to bed between 6 and 7. That is normal. And to some people that sounds extremely early, but that is normal. But if you are someone who is struggling to put your child down, between those hours, just something before 9 p.m. if you can. And if this is a struggle and you want someone to help you out, help you to figure out what schedule your child needs to be on, what time works best for them, how to help them get the best sleep that they can, please reach out to me. That's my main thing, is I work with families one-on-one in order to help you get the rest that you need and to help your child get the rest that they need. All right. Do I have any questions? If anybody's on here. How early can you start a sleeping routine? I have a 2-month-old. That's a good question, Yasmin. So you can start, when you say sleep routine, first of all, do you mean the routine before you're putting your child down to bed, or do you mean a schedule? If you mean the routine before you're putting your child down to bed, you can start that as early as day 1, meaning you just start creating this routine of we normally Maybe you change your baby's diaper, you put on the sleep sack or swaddle depending on their age, you read a couple books, you sing a song, and then you put them down. That's just an example. Everyone's bedtime routine can be different. There's so many different patterns that you can use, but basically the idea is that a sleep routine is a pattern that helps cue to your child that it's time to sleep. So if that's what you're referring to, you can use that right away with your child. Now, whether or not your child's going to pick up on it as a cue at an early age, that's where it differs. But generally between 6 to 8 weeks of age, when you see a child smile, like if they respond to a smile, so a social smile, not one that's just involuntary, that's a good sign that they are picking up on cues and that having a bedtime routine can be beneficial, and that will help you shape sleep over time. If you are asking about a sleep schedule, you won't expect an actual schedule like they nap at 9 a.m. and then 12 and then they go to bed at 6. Don't expect that until somewhere between 4 to 6 months. I'm sorry, the camera is shaking. I gotta stop leaning on my desk. But generally between 4 to 6 months is when you will see an actual schedule. However, again, you can start that sleep routine early on. And for a 2-month-old, just so you know, you can move bedtime up to about 6, and sometimes they are needing to go down at 5 or 5:30, depending when their last nap was. Any other questions? All right. Well, okay. So next week, I will be talking about sleep consolidation and fragmentation. So we're going to talk about consolidating sleep, meaning that they're transitioning between sleep cycles. They're able to sleep for a good period of time instead of frequently waking up at night or waking up and having shorter naps. So just to recap what we talked about just now, regular bedtime is really beneficial for older children. If they are napping still, we do want to take into consideration when they last napped, how long their nap was, what their day was like, and what their mood is like in the afternoon. But keep in mind that it's not black and white. It's a balancing act, and you have to know your child. Does your child benefit from going to bed earlier, or is your child like my client's child who needs to be in bed between 7 and 7:30, and an earlier time is not helpful? So if you are struggling with this, again, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help you get your child into a good rhythm. If you'd like a free download of the 5 elements that I've talked about, again, you can go to afterthestorksleep.com/elements of healthy sleep. I will see you guys next week at 1 p.m. On Tuesday when we talk about sleep consolidation and fragmentation. Thanks. Have a good day.